Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back, dear learners, on this course on architectural thesis. Today we will discuss the presentation which will focus on the tips for your effective presentation during your final review of the architectural thesis. So we will start with the content that will also include a recap of what was covered in the previous presentation. Thereafter we will look into mastering jury presentation, that is what are the strategies by which you can prepare your presentation in such a way that it is very clearly communicated to the jurors and the examiners are satisfied with the work that you have done as part of your architectural thesis. Then we will also look into some common mistakes and how to avoid those mistakes that we generally see that students do it when it comes to presentation. Thereafter, checklist for final presentation day. These are the list of things that you should be doing or you should have completed on the day of before the day of presentation. Then post presentation etiquette, what has to be followed. Thereafter, the conclusion, and then some activities that can be done after the end of this presentation. Some resources for further readings, and then the topics that will be covered in the next presentation will be shared with you. So to start with the recap of what was covered in the previous presentation, we focused on some of the key challenges that one student faces during architectural thesis and how to overcome those issues were discussed. So the first and foremost was discussed was related to the identification of a topic for architectural thesis. So the topic has to be selected in such a way that it balances your research as well as the design intent in such a way that it brings some amount of rigorous work at the end of your architectural thesis. Then effective time management and structured workflow will help you handle complex tasks and deadlines that is set by your thesis coordinator. Thereafter, improving technical skills and using some visual or digital tools might help you enhance the quality of your work, because these days with the advancement of technology there are different softwares or different tools that are available within the domain of students that you can explore and utilize in your thesis project. Thereafter, regular guidance, feedback and maintaining thorough documentation of the entire process is necessary so that you can show the same to the juror on the day of examination. Clear communication and presentation skill is required so that you express your ideas with more clarity and more professionally to the examiners. Then, building a support network and staying flexible will enable adaptation to feedback and some unforeseen changes. Then, incorporating sustainability, social relevance and such contemporary themes like considering climate change or promoting green infrastructure or blue infrastructure through your site planning exercises. So these are small such strategies that will help us mitigate the climate change effect. So like these, there are other ways by which you can make your project more contemporary in approach, and that will address that will also showcase your attitude towards the ongoing certain phenomenon in and around the within the society. So with all these informations in mind, if you start working towards the architectural thesis, you will obviously succeed in coming up with effective presentation on the day of your final viva. So now let us look into the topic of this presentation for which we are all here. So the first thing, once you have done your entire work, that is, you have prepared your sheet, you have everything with you, model, walkthroughs, 3D views, and the entire sheets with full details as required. But when it comes to presentation, sometimes it is found that few students do a very good work, but they fail, or they doesn't their vocabulary or their presentation technique doesn't create interest, or doesn't bring enthusiasm, like it doesn't create enthusiasm among the examiner or among the panels. So how do we actually overcome this issue? So this is what we are trying to figure out through this presentation. So a strong jury presentation is essentially to clearly communicate your design vision. So what is there in your mind, you have to speak that through the display of sheets and the models and walkthroughs that you have with you. So this is what has to be presented. So it requires some amount of practice before you come in front of the examiner. So after you present your work with certain clarity, it helps you build confidence, it helps you foster interaction with the jurors, and allows you to professionally defend and justify your work, because the work that you will do will always be questioned by the panel of experts, or maybe a panel of or maybe the clients at later stage. So jury basically tries to develop those skills within you and try to assess with how much clarity have you done this particular work. So this is what is generally evaluated through a presentation, along with some mandatory aspects, like whether you have completed all the deliverables, whether you have progressed, whether your progress from the scratch to the final product is correct or not, or is there any design flaw within your floor plans or within your elevation or section that you have designed, or the approach towards the topic, how can it be enhanced further, so that your work is actually comes out to be very effective. So this is what is actually evaluated through a presentation. Then to start with, an introduction is very essential for any thesis topic before you start. So your sheet content should have something which talks about the topic as a whole. So what is the topic all about? Try to give a brief overview of the thesis topic before you directly jump into the topic. For example, when you start designing, when you have designed a school for till class 12, or it may be a residential school, so try to give some statistics related to the project. So related to school, how many percentage of people are still illiterate in that particular part of the country where you have planned to build, or if there is any other relevant data related to the school project in that location. To try to give us some background that why school as a education system has come up, and in which governance system, the entire governance system about school, so that you gradually orient the juror towards your topic, because that on the day of jury there are at least 15 to 20 number of presentation that the juror has to go through. So to quickly change from one topic to another, you require some transition phase. So that transition phase can be given to the examiner through your background to the topic. So that also brings up some context builds up some context in the mind of juror, and with that context the work of your presentation will be evaluated. So the importance and relevance of the study has to be explained, statement of the research problem or design challenges are to be discussed, main objective or goal of the thesis has also to be highlighted through your introduction of to the topic, and then outline the presentation structure. Also give a glimpse that what all important sections are being covered in your thesis as a whole, and if you have prepared any model or walkthroughs, try to give a glimpse of that through the to the juror also, that okay, you are going to show some model at the end, or some walkthroughs or views or if there is any simulation attached to it. So you will be showing all these to the juror, so that the juror is prepared with the quantum of work that he or she will be evaluating within this 20-25 minutes of your presentation. Okay, so this is what is important. Then understanding the jury. So composition of the jury members, try to understand that, although it's not that much essential, because you have to be fully prepared because the juror, the composition of juror will not be revealed to you on before the day of presentation. Only once they enter, only once you start, or the day starts, the day of the jury starts, until then the jurors name are not revealed to the students. So you should be fully prepared of no matter who comes for the evaluation, but still once the juror is here present, so try to understand the perspective or the thinking of the person, because before the jury starts, the juror also gives some small brief talk about what are his expectations, or with what mindset the juror will be evaluating your work. So that will also help you orient or like modify your presentation approach. So this is what is also important. So we are also looking into the language and visuals to diverse your expertise. So that is also important. Importance of clarity and simplicity towards your work, the work that you've done, that also holds certain amount of weightage. Then also anticipating jury questions based on the background, or maybe based on your past experiences of attending your seniors jury. So you will also come out know that what are the common expectations by the juror. So try to understand all this before you come for the for the presentation day. Then next is structuring the presentation. So as explained, the structuring of sheet is ready, of your report is ready. So try to practice a little bit on the presentation, and also check that you don't exceed the time limit that is given to you. So clear segmentation with proper heading for easy navigation can be done. So if at all you have 10 to 12 number of sheets, or maybe 5 to 6 A0 size sheet, which converts to roughly 10 to 12 A1 size sheet. So you can give a heading that okay, these 3-4 sheet is based on the background, these are for the drawings, and remaining for the details or other aspects. So this is how you can categorize your work and give a broad heading to the sheets based on which it is composed. Then time management is also an important. Try to practice. Avoid overloading of slides with too much of data into your presentation, because you have a very limited time, and no matter how much you speak, the only certain key aspects will be processed by the juror. So always think of what are those key aspects and where you have to emphasize more on the on your work. So that has to be well thought of, or else much of the time will go on explaining the background aspects related to the topic. So ensuring smooth flow and connection between the sections is also very important. Then next is starting strong. Always start with very strong statement. Some good pitch for the project has to be selected. So clearly define the problem statement, highlight the objectives of your thesis, engage the jury immediately with interesting facts or visuals related to your project, set a confident tone for the rest of the presentation. So always your voice should be clearly audible to the juror. Your sheets should be clearly visible to the juror who will be sitting at a distance of sometimes at a distance of 2 or 1.5 meter. So till that distance your sheets has to be clearly visible. So that should be the approach behind preparing your presentation sheets. Then presenting the design concept, explain the inspiration sources or your strategy, like from where did you get this idea, try to devote some time on it. So concept diagrams, sketches, or some mood boards related to your project. Explain how concept has led you to some key design decision in your sheets, which you will be showing at later stage at different sections. Highlight the core themes, like if you have selected sustainability, or if there is innovation, or some social aspect or environmental aspect that you have emphasized in your site planning or in your floor plans or in your elevation, try to showcase that and emphasize that in your presentation. Connect the concept that you have in your mind with the program requirement as well as with the deliverable of your project. Then research and analysis, try to discuss that also with all the strategy that you have used for literature review. So showcase the inferences from case study, how you have summarized your user or community like user group survey. All that has to be explained. How many people have you surveyed, where did you visit, how were the number of users determined. So all this would help the examiner understand that you have followed a proper process, and not just emphasize on the output, also emphasize on the method that you have adopted to reach that result. So use charts, graphs and infographics to explain the findings. Then the stage comes, that is design development. So design iterations, that is, also try to bring some rough sheets that you have prepared for your work. So that possibly can help the examiner understand that, okay, so this is how the progress of the student has been in this past 3.5 or 4 months. So that is also some interesting approach. Illustrate problems encountered, discuss about some issues related to your previous design thoughts related to the project. Emphasize on innovative design solutions that you have implemented. Present feedback received from your previous jurors and then juries, internal juries, and how have you incorporated those in your presentation to reach this stage. Discuss material structure or special consideration about your project. Then is the final design presentation. So use floor plans, elevation, sections and other details to showcase the details about the project. Incorporate rendered 3D perspectives, so physical or digital models that you have for your project. Highlight critical spaces or elements that you have implemented as per the building codes. Explain functionality of your entire project, so the jury is not interested to see where all your different spaces are being kept. So generally students start with explaining, okay, so this is where my entrance is, this is where my my entrance lobby is, my classrooms are located at some corner, or if it is a hospital project, then your emergency. So all these have to be explained. The reasoning behind keeping all these places in some order has to be explained. So that is what will create interest and will bring discussion during after the presentation, or else your presentation will lack some touch, like some details will be missed in your presentation. So visual clarity and layout is also essential. Maintain consistent font and sizes. It should not look like your sheets are being prepared by different people. For example, your introduction and all are composed in different order, then your case studies and with your floor plans and other details. So the font sizes, the composition style has to be similar across your across your sheets that you have brought for the presentation. So avoid overcrowding with excessive text or images. Clear labeling of diagrams is necessary, and groups related to the information has to be related information. You can group all that together visually, so that you can do it in your sheet. So effective use of visual aids like diagrams, charts and images has to be used in your sheets. You should not have only text write up in your sheet. You should balance your text with your images that you have brought for the that you will be adding up in your sheets. So use flow charts, include animations or walkthroughs if you have prepared for your presentation. So try to showcase that to the juror. Ensure that all visuals have captions or brief explanation. Avoid distracting or pixelated graphics which are of low resolution. So try to avoid that kind of images in your presentation sheets. Then some oral presentation tips like speak slowly and clearly, communicate to the examiner, use natural gestures, avoid reading the content of your sheets as it is. So try to frame the sentences out of the bullet points that you have used in your sheet. So maintain always eye contact with your the panel members that are there for the jury. So that will create interest and try to bring natural tone in your presentation. Use voice modulation for emphasis. So try to emphasize more on some keywords, like if you have used some sustainability aspects, so then what are those sustainability aspects, or wherever you get a chance to explain them, try to relate, try to emphasize more on that, and then also explain that in the past you have emphasized this in your concept. So that is where these features are being used, and you try to showcase that through your design strategy. Then managing time, this is also very important because limited time is being allotted, like 15 or 20 minutes. So try to compose your presentation within that, and try to effectively use the time that is allotted to you. Then handling question and criticism, listen fully before you start answering the question. At times the question is incomplete, and then when you start answering it before the question is complete, it creates bad impression in front of the jury member. So always patiently listen to the question that is being asked by the jury member. So keep calm and try to fully composed yourself, answer directly and with honesty. If you have done the work, try to explain that in detail. If not, then try to explain that these were the limitations, or you have not considered these aspects for your thesis, and you just focused on these 4 or 5 related aspects. So use questions to reinforce your points, acknowledge valid feedback and appreciate the feedback, and also incorporate that once the jury is over, when you will be submitting your report or your final portfolio. Try to incorporate those comments and then utilize and show gratitude to the examiner for suggesting these changes. Then preparing for difficult questions, always anticipate challenging queries. It is not some kind of gathering where you will always be appreciated. There will be some critical points that will be suggested by the examiner. So try to note all those points and incorporate in your revisions. So practice some diplomatic responses also. You may try to pitch in when there are some critical scenario. Do not guess, admit what is known and what is unknown to you. Show openness to constructive feedback during the presentation. So the environment of the where you will be presenting, so how can you make that environment more beneficial to you? So arrive early, see how the sheets are to be arranged. So what is the order of presentation? So you have to be fully aware of the sequence of basically the panel in which you are going to display your sheets. So how are you going to organize your all sheets in that? So you have to be fully prepared for all these situations. So check projector or audio if there is visual presentation. Organize physical materials. Try to see the place where your bottle is going to be kept, whether it is appropriately placed or not, or if it needs some modification. Try to discuss that with your thesis coordinator and keep it ready for yourself. And always drink water, and try to always keep pen, pencil or some notebook or sketchbook with you, so that you note the points that is being given by the examiner or the questions, so that you answer them in a particular sequence. Body language and presence, stand with confident posture, or avoid pacing excessively. Use purposeful hand gestures, smile and show enthusiasm related to the project. Come with full confidence about your work, because this entire 3.5 months or 4 months you have invested from your on the architectural thesis. So that should reflect on the day of presentation. So engage different sections of audience. So give some mock presentation before you arrive on the day of presentation. Using notes effectively, use bullet points or cue cards. Don't read verbatim that is there in your sheet. So always try to use notes as guides. So whatever you have noted, or you must have prepared a speech or the content of your presentation, so try to note that and also display with hand gesture that in which section of your sheet is these things that you are talking about is being reflected. So engaging with jury, invite jurors to visualize movement through spaces. So tell stories that are related to some of the design challenges, highlight social and environmental impact through your project. So all these have to be explained in detail. Then the final summary slide, recap the main objective, or if it is in a sheet, then if you are able to come up with one last sheet with all the concept and your solution together, so that again the jury is connected with what you had intended at the beginning and how have you succeeded, and the process that you adopted and the end result. So this will bring more clarity to the examiner with what your intentions were and what were the final outcome. So visual presentation quality, this also requires some discussion. So use high resolution images, ensure layout consistency, use professional fonts and graphics, balance aesthetics and the information. So some digital tools that are used for presentation, which includes PowerPoint, and all these rendering softwares that will help you prepare your sheets in an effective way. So if there is an online presentation, you can go for these mediums, or if it is an offline presentation, then the sheets that you have got print, that has to be displayed here. Then incorporating sustainability and social relevance. So if you have emphasized on these aspects, so try to elaborate it wherever these are relevant. So practice and rehearsal, this is also an important aspect as already suggested. Then real life examples, like examples of well executed presentation, you can look into the previous year's presentation and visualize that and see where does the difficulty occur and how would you have attempted in that situation. So try to visualize that and then make your presentation in that order. Then building confidence, through this you can do this by always having a positive self-talk and visualization, knowing the strength and weakness, so that you work on your weakness and emphasize more on the strength that you have developed over these years. So to conclude, recap best practice for success, encourage early preparation and confidence, remind importance of clear communication, and invite questions and further discussion if it is anything that is related to your project. So some of the common mistakes, let us now check the common mistakes that is generally observed during the presentation and how to avoid that. So first is overcrowding the sheets with too much of text. So you have to maintain a balance of text and figure images, ignoring jury's background and expectations as it is being explained during the start of your start of the very first presentation, reading slides or sheets word for word, lack of rehearsal, that also might affect, so that it shows you are not well prepared. Then some mismanaged graphics and text that are lying here and there within your sheet, so that also should be avoided. Then the checklist for final presentation day, like you should carry your model, drawings, laptop and all those essential components with you. Backing the backup or copies of your presentation has to be there. Professional attire, you are dressed up in a professional attire and you should come accordingly for the presentation. You should always carry water, snacks and comfort items with you, so that when your jury is getting delayed, you are well stocked up with all these necessary items. Arrive early and mentally be prepared for the presentation day. So post presentation, accept feedback and gratitude to the examiner. Avoid arguing with the jury, network and build professional relationship. So what if you are if you have done good work, you are given a straightforward job opportunity on the day of your jury. So that has happened many times with many students, that during the presentation the jury like their work so much that they are given straight away opportunity to work with them in their office after their BARC is over. Then keep a positive attitude related to your work that you have done. So to conclude this presentation, so mastering jury presentation is essential for clear and confidently conveying your design idea. A well structured presentation with strong visuals and clear narrative engages the jury effectively. Practicing some oral delivery, managing time and handling questions helps you to succeed in your presentation. Incorporating some contemporary ideas like sustainability, social relevance will enhance the impact of your presentation. Confidence, preparation and learning from feedback will define the quality as well as outcome for the final jury presentation. So these are some activities that are suggested. You can just work on these after this presentation. These are resources that are highlighted here. You can refer these for your more understanding. So in our next presentation, we will focus on preparing the students for the life that is there after the thesis. So once your thesis is over, what are different avenues or opportunities that will come up in your way? So I'll try to give you some glimpse into those aspects. So this is what will be covered in your next presentation. So with this, I'd like to conclude my presentation, which was regarding the jury presentation, its etiquette, what to do and what not to do on the day of your jury presentation. So I hope these will help you come better prepared for the presentation, and the mistakes that is generally seen, you will not commit these mistakes on the day of presentation. So thank you for your patience listening, and I hope to see you in the next presentation.